Many people spend their lives trying to change the external. Routine, work, relationships, results. They invest time, energy, and hope, waiting for something out there to shift and finally bring the peace they've been searching for. But there is a subtle, almost invisible detail that changes everything. The way you're observing. It's like someone standing in front of a mirror, trying to change the reflection by pulling the image from the glass, adjusting the outside, without realizing that the only real change begins on their own face. The reality you live in doesn't respond to your desires. It responds to the silent vibration with which you observe the world. And this observation is not always conscious. Often you're seeing lack where there is abundance. You perceive delay where there is time. You expect resistance where flow already exists. But your lens, conditioned by the past, keeps focusing in the same place. In this video, you'll understand why reality isn't fixed. It's shaped by perception. When you change how you observe yourself, situations, and the universe, everything around you begins to reorganize. It's not magic, it's vibrational law. And the key lies in something only you can access, your center of observation. Today, you'll discover that the transformation you've been waiting for isn't outside. It begins now with a simple and powerful inner shift. Are you ready to see with new eyes? The invisible reflection. Your reality mirrors your lens. Everything you call reality is, in truth, a vibrational reflection of your point of observation. That may sound strange at first, but it's simple. What you experience is not just what happens outside, but how you're looking at what happens. Imagine a mirror. You stand before it and see a reflection. If you smile, the reflection smiles. If you withdraw, the reflection does too. But what if you didn't know it was a mirror? What if you believed the reflection was the world, when it's actually the world responding to your inner state? That's what happens to most people. They wrestle with the reflection, unaware that change begins from within. Life is constantly reflecting what you emit, not as punishment, but as resonance. The universe operates through vibration. Everything emits a frequency, and your observation, though silent, carries a powerful energetic signature. If you're looking at life through the lens of lack, even when opportunities appear, you won't see them. Not because they don't exist, but because your inner lens is programmed to focus on what's missing. You don't perceive abundance because your attention is addicted to recognizing the void. Reality, then, is shaped not by what you want, but by what you vibrationally sustain as you observe. Your desire may say, "I want prosperity." But if your observational lens says, "This is hard, this takes too long, this isn't for me," the vibration that commands your experience remains one of limitation, and reality responds accordingly. This is one of the greatest illusions in human experience. Believing change comes by achieving more, doing more, chasing more. When in truth, what truly transforms is how you perceive what is already present. You could be surrounded by possibilities, but if you're looking through a closed consciousness, you'll only see obstacles. On the other hand, someone with a more open lens and a higher vibration could face the same situation and see a chance to grow, create, and evolve. The lens through which you see the world is not neutral. It's formed by past experiences, inherited beliefs, emotional conditioning, and energies you've absorbed throughout your life. And what few realize is that this lens can be adjusted. The moment you become aware of how you're observing, not just what happens, but who you are within what happens, you begin accessing a new level of creation. You stop being a victim of the mirror and become the author of the image. You stop fighting the reflection and begin shifting your posture toward it. This doesn't mean denying facts. It means recognizing that there's a difference between what is and what is seen, and that difference is where all transformation begins. So if life keeps repeating patterns, if the same situations show up with different faces, maybe it's not the world that needs to change. Maybe it's your lens. The mirror is just doing its job. The rest is up to you. How you're observing your life without realizing it. Much of your life isn't driven by what you consciously choose, but by what you unconsciously observe. There is within you a silent, nearly invisible observer that acts even before thought, a conditioned gaze that filters what you see, feel, and understand about the world. This automatic observer was shaped by years of experiences, family beliefs, traumas, painful memories, and repeated stories. It's the one who sees first. Before you think, it has already observed. Before you react, it has already interpreted. And the greatest challenge is that, as long as you're unaware of this hidden gaze, it keeps creating the same reality over and over, like a cycle that loops back to the starting point. Maybe you wake up each day and, without realizing, observe time as an enemy. You begin the day vibrating with rush, scarcity of hours. There's not enough time. That initial observation defines your day's frequency. Or maybe you look at your body with critical eyes, seeing only what's missing, what's wrong, what should change. Unknowingly, you reinforce a negative vibrational relationship with it. Sometimes the focus is on your finances. Everything feels scarce, hard, slow. Even when money comes in, the automatic lens already deems it insufficient. This isn't rational, it's energetic. It's the invisible lens running in the background. And the most curious part? That automatic observer often believes it's seeing reality as it is. But what we call reality is always interpreted through this inner vibrational field. Two people can be in the same room, hear the same words, live the same situation, and still have completely different experiences. Why? Because what changes isn't the fact, but the lens of observation. The question that begins to open portals is, what am I so certain I'm seeing that keeps repeating? This question isn't looking for a quick answer. It's meant to provoke a pause, to disrupt the autopilot, to allow you to observe yourself observing. Notice how often your attention is addicted to finding what's wrong. You walk into a room and immediately spot what's out of place. You talk to someone and latch on to what wasn't said. You think about yourself and zero in on what you haven't yet achieved. That way of observing isn't neutral. It emits a vibration, and that vibration shapes the experience. Start noticing which themes your mind frequently revisits. What automatic judgments arise when something doesn't go as expected? What internal scenes do you replay, even when nothing is happening externally? The key is to move out of the role of someone who merely reacts to the world and into the role of someone who perceives how they're looking at the world. This isn't about positive thinking or pretending everything is okay. It's about awakening to the fact that you are constantly creating through what you observe most consistently. And when that awareness awakens, a new space opens, a space where you're no longer a prisoner of the old observer, a space where you can finally choose a new gaze. Observation as a portal to creation. There is a silent, almost imperceptible moment between what happens and how you interpret it. That is where the power of creation resides. Observation is not just a passive act, as many believe. It is an active frequency that continuously communicates with the quantum field. You are not simply seeing reality, you are shaping it, activating it, sustaining it through the way you observe. The universe doesn't respond to the words you speak, but to the energy with which you observe them. It's not desire that creates, it's the vibrational field of your attention that manifests. That's why so many people wish for grand things, but keep getting the same results. Because even though the desire points to a different future, their observation remains locked in the same frequency. Human attention is like a beam of light. Wherever it rests, energy is activated, and that energy begins to condense into experiences, encounters, events, sensations. That's why observing is more than seeing. It is collapsing possibilities within an infinite field of realities. It is making a choice, even when you don't realize you're choosing. Quantum physics has already shown that the observer influences the behavior of reality. At the subatomic level, particles behave differently when they are being observed. But what few understand is that this doesn't happen only in laboratories. Your life is your personal experiment, and your consciousness is the most powerful measuring tool that exists. When you change the frequency with which you observe something, whether it's a challenge, a relationship, a project, or yourself, you are literally shifting the field of possibilities around it. What once seemed blocked begins to show openings. What seems stagnant begins to flow. Not because the outside world changed, but because your inner vibration repositioned. This shift doesn't happen through force. It happens through presence, through simply observing with more awareness, less judgment, more space. When you become a more elevated observer, everything you look at begins to vibrate differently, because it's not the gaze itself, but the vibration behind it that speaks to the universe. Notice, every time you're at peace, something opens. Every time you let go of control and simply observe with clarity and surrender, new ideas emerge, answers appear, paths reveal themselves. It's not coincidence, it's resonance. It's alignment between your consciousness and the creative intelligence of the universe. That's why observation is a portal, a space between the old and the new, between the automatic and the conscious, between what was and what can be. You don't need to know all the steps, you just need to start observing from a new place. A place with more trust than fear, more presence than hurry, more acceptance than resistance. In that place, reality doesn't need to be forced. It flows. And you, as a conscious creator, begin to realize that everything that once seemed impossible was merely waiting for a new observer to be revealed. The trap of automatic focus. There is a subtle, almost invisible force that keeps most people stuck in repetitive patterns. Automatic focus. It doesn't scream, ask for permission, or announce itself. It simply acts, like a conditioned reflex, like a river always flowing down the same path. And until it's recognized, it continues to steer your energy, your perception, and inevitably, your reality. Automatic focus is the vibrational habit of placing your attention in the same places, on what's missing, what's wrong, what might go wrong, what has gone wrong before. It's the echo of past experiences that still occupy a privileged place in your lens of observation. That's why so many people feel like they're going in circles, because their gaze is locked in the same spot, even when everything around them has already changed. The universe responds to your vibration with precision, and the vibration you emit is largely determined by what you choose or allow yourself to observe. When your focus is unconsciously directed toward fear, your body reacts. The field contracts, the mind tightens, and the world begins to look hostile, scarce, limited. But all of this is merely a projection of your focus. See how common it is to wake up and, without realizing it, immediately focus on what you didn't accomplish yesterday, on the challenges ahead, on the pressure to come. This movement happens so fast it feels natural. But what feels natural is often just a habit repeated over time. Automatic focus strengthens what should have been released. When you keep putting attention on the problem, even after reflecting on it, you feed it. When you keep talking about what hurts you, even while trying to heal, you anchor it. When you revisit pain, even while seeking healing, you reactivate its frequency. This isn't about ignoring reality, but about realizing that focus is like an energetic magnifying glass. Whatever you observe frequently and intensely tends to expand. So when you observe fear with prolonged attention, it grows. When you focus on resentment, it strengthens. When you dwell on lack, it multiplies. And perhaps the most challenging part of this trap is that it feels involuntary. But there is a turning point. The moment you realize you can step out of autopilot and reclaim the power of choice. Because focus can be trained, it can be repositioned, and when it is, it shifts the vibrational field you emit, and thus the reality that responds. The key is to bring light to this habit. Start observing yourself with curiosity. Where does your attention settle when you're not thinking of anything? What thoughts arise spontaneously when you're in silence? What is the dominant theme of your conversations, your worries, your outlook? This self-observation begins the process of liberation, because by noticing automatic focus, you begin to open space for new possibilities. The gaze expands, the field begins to reorganize, and you move from repetition mode into creation mode. Life doesn't need more effort, it needs more awareness. What you focus on becomes stronger. And now that you know this, you can begin strengthening exactly what you want to see bloom. How to shift your observation without force. Changing the way you observe life is not an act of force, it's an act of presence. Many people, once they realize that their observation shapes reality, try to immediately control their thoughts, correct their emotions, or force a new perspective. But this effort often carries the same vibration that created the problem in the first place: resistance. You don't need to fight your old way of seeing. You simply need to choose a new starting point. And that choice begins in stillness. Because it's in the silence between thoughts, in the breath that slows your inner time, that consciousness returns to where everything begins, the now. Imagine your observation as a flashlight. Wherever you aim it, it illuminates. But if you try to change the direction of the light while tense, rushed, or reactive, the beam shakes, wavers, loses focus. On the other hand, when you breathe and release, even for a few seconds, the flashlight steadies. And then you can direct your gaze towards something new. Not with effort, but with intention. This is the essence of vibrational change. It's not about denying what's happening. It's about choosing not to observe from the same level of consciousness. You may be facing a real challenge, but you can still observe it with more presence, more acceptance, more openness. And this new way of seeing already begins to alter the field, because you're no longer looking through the eyes of the old self, but through the awareness of someone who knows they can choose. A practical way to begin this shift is to simply notice the moment the old perspective shows up. Maybe you catch yourself judging a situation, anticipating the worst, or replaying a limiting thought. Instead of fighting it, breathe. Bring your body back to the present. Feel your feet on the ground, the air moving through your nose, the stillness beneath the agitation. This movement breaks the automatic current and returns to you the power of choice. And then, from this reconnected presence, you can ask, what would be the highest way to observe this right now? You may not get an immediate answer, but the question itself is already an opening, a crack in the conditioning, a doorway for consciousness to enter. Shifting your observation isn't about painting reality with false colors. It's about seeing the same colors in a different light. Like watching the sky at dusk. At first it seems gray, but if you linger, breathe, and surrender to the moment, subtle blues and golden streaks begin to appear. So it is with life. When you slow down your gaze, reality reveals itself as richer, more fluid, more open than it first appeared. Situations stop being walls and become doors. Problems reveal themselves as invitations for expansion. Old wounds expose the roots of your strength. You don't need to fight your thoughts. You only need to return to your center. And from that center, make new vibrational choices. Choose to observe with compassion instead of judgment, with trust instead of control, with surrender instead of resistance. From this inner space, you discover that you don't need to wait for life to change in order to feel different. You begin to feel different, and life responds. What begins to change when the observer changes? The deepest changes rarely begin with a bang. They don't shout, ask for permission, or arrive with applause. They begin in the unseen, in the way you start observing what you used to simply react to. And when that observation changes, something begins to reorganize, first within, then around you. What once felt like a block begins to dissolve without a rational explanation. What used to demand force, control, and struggle now flows with greater ease. Synchronicities begin to appear as subtle signs, quiet confirmations that the world is, in some mysterious way, responding to your new frequency. Not because everything out there changed, but because something in you did, and the universe simply followed. This is how life works at its deepest level, through vibrational correspondence. When you change your point of observation, you don't just interpret the world differently. You activate new reality tracks. It's like tuning into a radio station that was always available, but had gone unnoticed because it wasn't within the frequency of your attention. You may start to notice small, everyday miracles, an answer that arrives at just the right time, an unexpected invitation, a clear intuition, people who once felt distant now drawing near. Doors that once seemed locked begin to open. None of this is random. The external reality is adjusting to your new inner state, as if saying, now you're ready to see what you couldn't before. And most transformative of all, you no longer react the same way. What used to throw you off center now just passes through. Situations that once triggered anxiety are now met with a different kind of presence, not indifference, but wisdom. It's as if you've stopped being pushed around by life and started sailing with it. This doesn't mean there won't be challenges, but how you view them changes everything, because now you know that every challenge contains the seed of expansion. You begin to trust, even without all the answers. You begin to relax, even in uncertainty, because you've felt the impact of shifting the observer, and you know this is the true source of transformation. Over time, this new way of seeing stops being an effort and becomes your natural state. You begin to live from a more stable, calmer, more conscious center, and that center becomes your foundation for creation. Life stops being a series of reactions and becomes a continuous expression of your vibration. That's when everything begins to make sense. Not because you've solved every mystery, but because you've learned to trust the flow that emerges when your gaze aligns with your deepest being. You become the reflection of what you wish to see in the world, and reality, like a generous mirror, responds. We've reached the end of our journey, and perhaps now you can see more clearly. The great shift you've been waiting for doesn't come from outside. It begins when you change how you observe yourself, your circumstances, and the universe around you. Nothing truly changes from the outside in. Everything changes when the observer silently begins to vibrate at a different frequency. When you stop reacting the way you always have, when you release the old gaze and choose to see with more presence, more openness, more awareness, reality responds. Today, instead of trying to change the world, change the way you see it. Try letting go of the old focus. Take a deep breath and allow yourself to observe everything from a higher place. You'll be surprised by what begins to happen. Observation is the seed of reality, and you are already planting something right now.